classified information I get as a I can't take classified information I get as a senator and give it to somebody with no consequence. I can't take classified information I get as a senator and give it to somebody with no consequence. I can't take classified information I get as a senator and give it to somebody with no consequence.
For president! Let's make it happen!
Campaign has been made. So Matthew, a lot has been made in this campaign of the language that is used, the name calling that's been used, especially in the primary. As an 11-year-old watching it, what's your reaction?
I really think that listening to a few bad words coming out of Donald Trump is a lot better than people getting blown up by terrorists, people getting burned alive, heads being chopped off, and people getting drowned.
Maybe it's because you arrogantly call Americans.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask? Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask? Aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
Maybe
aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
Maybe it's because you arrogantly call Americans deplorable.
You can put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
Or maybe it's because the director of the FBI said you lied about your emails.
There is no classified material. Was that true?
No, there was classified material emailed.
Or maybe it's because your policies have allowed ISIS and terrorism to spread and made America less safe and less prosperous.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
Do you really need to ask?
Have this bold truth teller. Donald Trump, they finally have this bold truth teller who's been willing to lay out a clear and coherent and courageous plan to do that. And I think that's what's generated the enthusiasm, the crowds that you see around the country, and I think it accounts for an awful lot of the interest that you.
I've always tried to.
Well, have you always told the truth?
I've always tried to. People knew I was using a personal email. What I did was allowed by the State Department.
The internal audit found no evidence that the secretary requested or obtained guidance or approval.
The report says, no, 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 you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong.
There's so many inconsistencies.
She never asked anybody. This was never allowed.
This report said that you, quote, had an obligation to discuss using your personal email and that you didn't. It feels like she's lying straight out.
And to think that she has a shot at being our president, crooked Hillary Clinton. We can't let it happen. If I win, believe me, make America great again, and it's going to be greater than ever before. We have a chance to be greater than ever before.
Secretary Clinton, thank you very much for coming tonight. As a naval flight officer, I held a top secret sensitive compartmentalized information clearance, and that provided me access to materials and information highly sensitive to our warfighting capabilities. Had I communicated this information not following prescribed protocols, I would have been prosecuted and imprisoned. Secretary Clinton, how can you expect those such as myself, who were and are entrusted with America's most sensitive information, to have any confidence in your leadership as president when you clearly corrupted our national security?
A lot of people, the young councilman. You know what, dear? You have a different opinion. She is a Somali American elected to the city council. I'm really proud of that. Well, then why don't you go run for something then?
I'm working for a Somali American.
Well, good. Good luck to you.
not going there, my friends. I'm telling you right now, we're going to write fairer rules for the middle class, and we are going to raise taxes on the middle class. On the middle class. Taxes on the middle class. Going to raise taxes on the middle class. Going to raise taxes on the middle class. Going to raise taxes on the middle class.
Mrs. Clinton saw the piece, and I got a call from the White House. And they said Mrs. Clinton was going to be in town to give a speech in Boston, and would I come and meet with her? I said, sure. And just the two of us. They closed the door. Mrs. Clinton sits down. We have hamburgers and French fries.
And you tutor her.
Right, and at the end of the conversation, Mrs. Clinton stood up. She said, let's get our picture taken, which we did. And she said, Professor Warren, we've got to stop that awful bill, referring to this bankruptcy bill that's sponsored by the credit card companies.
And then?
One of the first bills that came up after she was Senator Clinton was the bankruptcy bill. This is a bill that's like a vampire. It will not die, right? There's a lot of money behind it. And
the bill her husband had vetoed.
Her husband had vetoed it very much at her urging.
And?
She voted in favor of it.
Why?
As Senator Clinton, the pressures are very different. The credit card companies have been giving money, and they have influence.
And Mrs. Clinton was one of them, as senator. Yeah.
She has taken money from the groups, and more to the point, she worries about them as a constituency.
So what does this mean, though, to these people, these millions of people out there whom the politicians cavort in front of as favoring the middle class, and then are beholden to the powerful interests that undermine the middle class? What does it say about politics today?
You know, this is the scary part about democracy today. We're talking again about the impact of money. The credit industry on this bankruptcy bill has spent tens of millions of dollars lobbying, and as their profits grow, they just throw more into lobbying for how they can get laws that will make it easier and easier and easier to drain money out of the pockets of middle-class families.
Reported you've made $5 million making speeches. The president's made more than $100 million.
We came out of the White House not only dead broke, but in debt. We struggled to, piece together the resources for mortgages for houses. It was not easy.
you know, you had to make double the money, get us houses.
But do you think Americans are going to understand 5 times the median income in this country for one speech? I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. I did not send nor receive anything that was classified at the time.
I'm doing one thing that I don't know that I get much credit for, but I must say a lot of people do like it. I'm self-funding. I'm putting up my own money. I don't have special interests telling me, here's money, Donald, and by the way, I hope you remember me in 2 years when we need something. We're going to do the right thing for the people of this country for the first time, maybe in many, many decades. We're self-funding the campaign, no special interests, no donors, no lobbyists telling me they need help with lumber, they need help with electric, they need help with pharmaceuticals. We're going to do the right thing. It's costing me a tremendous amount of money, spending a lot of time, but it's costing a lot of money. It's something I don't know that I'm given proper credit for it, but you know what? I feel better about it because nobody has me. I'm working for you. I'm not working for anybody else. Good luck. The things I'm most proud about is that I create jobs. Over the years, tens of thousands of jobs for our country, and I'll do that for you. I will tell you this, and I can say it with certainty. I will be the greatest jobs-producing president that God ever created. I love the subject, I love doing it, and I love helping people. And there's nothing like helping people than getting them and their family great jobs.
because we're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business.
Don't let anybody tell you that, it's corporations and businesses that create jobs.
As the only bank devoted exclusively to entrepreneurs, BDC is there to help you focus on what you do best. In Daniel's case, that would be bicycles.
At the base are being marched through a residential neighborhood to go ahead and disturb good American people, but don't disturb sick Hillary. Residential neighborhood, can you believe it?
Unbelievable.
So disturbing the peace, just don't disturb sick Hillary.
To say that this is a big media event would probably be an understatement. And even with competition for Monday Night Football, they are still expecting better than 100 million viewers. Now, I know that seems like a big number, but for example, it pales compared to the wedding of Charles and Diana. For that one, 750 million viewers.
Wow, if that isn't a humbling experience, so even if they get 100 million, it's about a seventh what it was for Charles and Diana, what, more than 30 years ago. Well, it just gives you a chance to step back. The legendary actor Jon Voight joining me right now, what he makes of those numbers. I mean, these are off the chart figures no matter how you look at it, John. So a lot of people are going to be tuning in. There is as much entertainment as substance value here. As someone who appreciates both, what do you look at?
Well, what do I look at? I'm looking at you. Hello, Neil. It's good to see you after all this time. You know, everyone's throwing in. I just had news that the New York Times and the Washington Post, no surprise, but they've joined the liars of the world to try to take down Donald Trump. Donald Trump is an extraordinary fellow and has accomplished much in his life. And I've been watching him on his trips around the country trying to educate people to what he might do as President of the United States. And I have the greatest admiration for him. He has several things were very surprising. One is he goes from place to place across the country, and at the end of maybe a 12-hour day, 14-hour day, he's as clear and as strong as he was when he started in the morning at 7:30 or whatever it is. Also, I've noticed that he's very considerate of the people around him. I've noticed that when he finishes a speech, as he did with the Voters and Values Summit, which I was at, he came off and he thanked the people that had helped him, especially, gave a pat on the back to the guy who ran his teleprompter, thanked me. He's very considerate of other people. And I found out yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Why don't so many of your colleagues, John, why don't so many of your colleagues, and I know you and I have discussed this in the past, they don't see that same Donald Trump. And many of them are putting out these ads now saying it would be horrible if he ever becomes president. Many others insisting, I think Barbara Streisand and the like, saying that they'll leave the country if he ever gets into the Oval Office. What do you make of that?
Well, they're buying the Kool-Aid, aren't they? They're buying whatever the Democrat Party puts out, which is, they don't have much of a reputation for the truth. But the people in Hollywood on the left are loyal to Hillary. Okay. There's big issues in terms of the character of the people running. We have a situation where we can look at the history down through the last couple of years and her history as Secretary of State. Donald Trump has no blood on his hands, as does Hillary. Remember Benghazi. Remember Benghazi. And I can tell you this, one thing you can be sure of is Donald Trump is no liar. So
right, well,
there's a great, vast difference, a vast chasm between the two candidates.
I understand what you're saying, but they
disagree with
Donald Trump is
well,
a liar,
yeah, but
and they think the moderator. They think the moderator should play a role in every time he has an exaggeration, go after him. Now, I don't know if they would have the same zeal if the moderator did that going after Hillary, but anyway, that's what they say.
I wonder how it's going to turn out. I wonder, like I'm on the spot right now with you, Neil. You're throwing things back in my face and saying, well, what about this, what about this? But but I know Donald Trump, and I know the things that he said, and I find them to be true. I find the things that he's talking about to be true. He has a sense of fun. He has a lot of things, that you can point to. But, I find that in sometimes an unusual, sometimes awkward way, he says exactly what needs to be said, and he tells the truth.
John,
I'll give you an example. Let me give you this example.
Go ahead, real quick.
Yeah. Okay, here's my example. When he said to Hugh Hewitt, he said, Obama founded ISIS, and Hugh Hewitt said, "Oh, you mean because he pulled the troops out and left that vacuum?" And Donald said he founded ISIS, and the people who are listening to it got an education because they didn't know that he pulled the troops out. So many people don't know anything, but the basic truth is that without that movement of troops out of Iraq, ISIS would not have been come to be.
Well, you make a good point.
That's unusual.
I got you.
Okay.
While I had you, John, I'd be remiss. I mean, your daughter is Angelina Jolie. Obviously, the Brad Pitt divorce. I mean, you are torn. You're in a difficult situation. Will they? Is it your opinion they'll be able to resolve this?
Look, I'm not going to speak on that. I certainly am concerned about the children, and my love is with my daughter, and I hope things work out well.
Did it surprise you, or did you see this coming?
Neil, did you hear what I said? I'm not going to get into it. Listen, you're a journalist, Neil. No, I don't want to comment on it. No.
Okay. Finally, then, on Donald Trump, something happy to comment on. He's got pressure. Hillary Clinton has pressure, too. How do you think, just to sort of win over people emotionally, what would she have to do?
Oh, I think the history is down, unfortunately for that side, if you're rooting for Hillary, because we know what she's done as Secretary of State and the things that she said, for instance, to the mother and father from the heroes who perished in Benghazi. And that's on record. We know who she is, so it's going to be very difficult for her. She's going to have to. What she has done in the past is attack Donald Trump, just called him names, and try to get the attention deflected from herself. But it's going to be a little tough for her, I think.
We'll watch closely. It should be very good drama tonight. John Voight, thank you for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Oh, okay, Neil. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you very, very much. John Voight. All right, we have a lot more coming up, including Kennedy in the spin room. This is where both sides try to spin their stories before and after the debate. Our new
I used to watch This Perfect Couple. They were the
Ahead, you might ask.
Maybe.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
Maybe it's because you arrogantly call Americans deplorable.
You could put half of Trump's supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
Or maybe it's because the director of the FBI said you lied about your emails.
There is no classified material. Was that true?
There was classified material emailed.
Or maybe it's because your policies have allowed ISIS and terrorism to spread and made America less safe and less prosperous.
Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you might ask?
Do you really need to ask?
This is truly a nightmare. If you're a black Republican and white Republicans are just finding out that they're in slavery with them, they don't have rights either. They do us just as bad as they do white Republicans. They are wiping us out, taking everything. Everybody getting foreclosed on the white Republicans and black people. Amazing.
Where are you guys up from?
Gonna win. I'm sorry. You know what? Boo if
if you want. I am glad you're saying that. Everybody should say that. The enemy is complacency.
Yes.
Say it every day. Not only could he certainly could win.
I'm afraid, Bill. People are in denial, I think, about this, but the chance of him winning is really, really good.
I agree.
Yes, boo, because we don't want him to be president. But please don't live in denial on this, because because the very thing that we are all describing here, we're all laughing, and it's going to actually, as you were just describing this, I thought, make America great again. He's going to turn his presidency into a reality show. But people, if I say that, millions are going to go, yeah, I know.
Away from the start of this debate.
That's right. 8 minutes, 30 seconds or so. Let's get some final thoughts from our panelists. Just David, in terms of a cheat sheet for viewers at home, what are you going to be watching for? What do you encourage them to?
Well, I think everybody's set up the parameters. How does Trump do in terms of the sort of basic mastery and temperament test? And does Hillary Clinton connect? Those are going to be the connect in a very human way and give people a sense of her motivation. Those are going to be the things that I'm going to be looking for. And then, the non-linear things, the reaction shots, how someone reacts to an unexpected...
The moments,
those moments that we talked about before, yeah.
free. I just crash landed.
You're going to see some very bad things happen because the Fed is not doing their job. The Fed is being more political than Secretary Clinton.
Mr. Trump, we're talking about the burden that Americans have to pay, yet you have not released your tax returns. And the reason nominees have released their returns for decades is that voters will know if their potential president owes money to, who he owes it to, and any business conflicts. Don't Americans have a right to know if there are any conflicts of interest?
I don't mind releasing. I'm under a routine audit, and it'll be released. And as soon as the audit's finished, it'll be released. But you will learn more about Donald Trump by going down to the federal elections, where I filed a 104-page, essentially financial statement of sorts, the forms that they have. It shows income. In fact, the income, I just looked today, the income is filed at $694 million for this past year. $694 million. If you would have told me I was going to make that 15 or 20 years ago, I would have been very surprised. But that's the kind of thinking that our country needs. When we have a country that's doing so badly, that's being ripped off by every single country in the world, it's the kind of thinking that our country needs, because everybody... Lester, we have a trade deficit with all of the countries that we do business with of almost $800 billion a year. You know what that is? That means who's negotiating these trade deals? We have people that are political hacks negotiating our trade deals.
The IRS has an audit of your taxes. You're perfectly free to release your taxes during an audit. And so the question, does the public's right to know outweigh your personal...
Well, I told you, I will release them as soon as the audit. Look, I've been under audit almost for 15 years. I know a lot of wealthy people that have never been audited. I said, do you get audited? I get audited almost every year. And in a way, I should be complaining. I'm not even complaining. I don't mind it. It's almost become a way of life. I get audited by the IRS, but other people don't. I will say this. We have a situation in this country that has to be taken care of. I will release my tax returns against my lawyer's wishes. When she releases her 33,000 emails that have been deleted, as soon as she releases them, I will release my tax returns. And that's against my lawyers. They say, don't do it. I will tell you this. No, in fact, watching shows, reading the papers, almost every lawyer says, you don't release your returns until the audit's complete. When the audit's complete, I'll do it. But I would go against them if she releases her email.
So it's negotiable?
It's not negotiable. No, let her release the email. Why did she delete 33,000?
Well, I'll let her ask that, but let me just admonish the audience one more time. There was an agreement. We did ask you to be silent, so it would be helpful for us. Secretary Clinton.
Well, I think you've just seen another example of bait and switch here. For 40 years, everyone running for president has released their tax returns. You can go and see nearly, I think, 39, 40 years of our tax returns, but everyone has done it. We know the IRS has made clear there is no prohibition on releasing it when you're under audit. So you've got to ask yourself, why won't he release his tax returns? And I think there may be a couple of reasons. First, maybe he's not as rich as he says he is. Second, maybe he's not as charitable as he claims to be. Third, we don't know all of his business dealings, but we have been told through investigative reporting that he owes about $650 million to Wall Street and foreign banks. Or maybe he doesn't want the American people, all of you watching tonight, to know that he's paid nothing in federal taxes, because the only years that anybody's ever seen were a couple of years when he had to turn them over to state authorities when he was trying to get a casino license, and they showed he didn't pay any federal income tax. So if he's paid zero, that means zero for troops, zero for vets, zero for schools or health. And I think probably he's not all that enthusiastic about having the rest of our country see what the real reasons are, because it must be something really important, even terrible, that he's trying to hide. And the financial disclosure statement, they don't give you the tax rate. They don't give you all the details that tax returns would. And it just seems to me that this is something that the American people deserve to see. And I have no reason to believe that he's ever going to release his tax returns, because there's something he's hiding. and we'll guess. We'll keep guessing at what it might be that he's hiding. But I think the question is, were he ever to get near the White House, what would be those conflicts? Who does he owe money to? Well, he owes you the answers to that, and he should provide them.
He also raised the issue of your emails. Do you want to respond to that?
I do. You know, I made a mistake using a private email.
That's for sure.
And if I had to do it over again, I would obviously do it differently. But I'm not going to make any excuses. It was a mistake, and I take responsibility for that.
Mr. Trump?
That was more than a mistake. That was done purposely, okay? That was not a mistake. That was done purposely. When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth, so they're not prosecuted. When you have the man that set up the illegal server taking the Fifth, I think it's disgraceful. And believe me, this country thinks it's disgraceful. It really thinks it's disgraceful also. As far as my tax returns, you don't learn that much from tax returns, that I can tell you. You learn a lot from financial disclosure. And you should go down and take a look at that. The other thing, I'm extremely underleveraged. The report that said 650, which, by the way, a lot of friends of mine that know my business said, boy, that's really not a lot of money. It's not a lot of money relative to what I had. The buildings that were in question, they said in the same report, which was, actually, it wasn't even a bad story, to be honest with you, but the buildings are worth $3.9 billion. And the 650 isn't even on that. But it's not 650. It's much less than that. But I could give you a list of banks. I would, if that would help you, I would give you a list of banks. These are very fine institutions, very fine banks. I could do that very quickly. I am very underleveraged. I have a great company. I have a tremendous income. And the reason I say that is not in a braggadocious way. It's because it's about time that this country had somebody running it that has an idea about money. When we have $20 trillion in debt and our country's a mess, you know, it's one thing to have $20 trillion in debt and our roads are good and our bridges are good and everything's in great shape. Our airports are like from a third world country. You land at LaGuardia, you land at Kennedy, you land at LAX, you land at Newark, and you come in from Dubai and Qatar and you see these incredible, you come in from China, you see these incredible airports, and you land, we become a third world country. So, the worst of all things has happened. We owe $20 trillion, and we're a mess. We haven't even started. And we've spent $6 trillion in the Middle East, according to a report that I just saw, whether it's 6 or 5, but it looks like it's 6. $6 trillion in the Middle East. We could have rebuilt our country twice. And it's really a shame. And it's politicians like Secretary Clinton that have caused this problem. Our country has tremendous problems. We're a debtor nation, we're a serious debtor nation, and we have a country that needs new roads, new tunnels, new bridges, new airports, new schools, new hospitals, and we don't have the money because it's been squandered on so many of your ideas.
Maybe because you haven't paid any federal income tax for a lot of years. And the other thing I think is important, it would be squandered too. If your main claim to be president of the United States is your business, then I think we should talk about that. You know, your campaign manager said that you built a lot of businesses on the backs of little guys. And indeed, I have met a lot of the people who were stiffed by you and your businesses, Donald. I've met dishwashers, painters, architects, glass installers, marble installers, drapery installers, like my dad was, who you refused to pay when they finished the work that you asked them to do. We have an architect in the audience who designed one of your clubhouses at one of your golf courses. It's a beautiful facility. It immediately was put to use, and you wouldn't pay what the man needed to be paid, what he was charging you.
Maybe he didn't do a good job, and I was unsatisfied with his work, which our country should do too.
The thousands of people that you have stiffed over the course of your business not deserve some kind of apology from someone who has taken their labor, taken the goods that they produced, and then refused to pay them? I can only say that I'm certainly relieved that my late father never did business with you. He provided a good middle-class life for us, but the people he worked for, he expected the bargain to be kept on both sides. And when we talk about your business, you've taken business bankruptcy 6 times. There are a lot of great business people that have never taken bankruptcy once. You call yourself the king of debt. You talk about leverage. You even at one time suggested that you were trying to negotiate down the national debt of the United States. Well, sometimes there's not a direct transfer of skills from business to government, but sometimes what happened in business would be really bad for government. And we need to be very clear about that.
Look, it's all words, it's all sound bites. I built an unbelievable company, some of the greatest assets anywhere in the world, real estate assets anywhere in the world, beyond the United States, in Europe, lots of different places. It's an unbelievable company. But on occasion, 4 times, we used certain laws that are there. And when Secretary Clinton talks about people that didn't get paid, first of all, they did get paid a lot, but taking advantage of the laws of the nation. Now, if you want to change the laws, you've been there a long time, change the laws. But I take advantage of the laws of the nation because I'm running a company. My obligation right now is to do well for myself, my family, my employees, for my companies. And that's what I do. But what she doesn't say is the tens of thousands of people that are unbelievably happy and that love me. I'll give you an example. We're just opening up on Pennsylvania Avenue, right next to the White House. So if I don't get there one way, I'm going to get to Pennsylvania Avenue another. But we're opening the old post office. Under budget, ahead of schedule, saved tremendous money. I'm a year ahead of schedule. And that's what this country should be doing. We build roads and they cost 2 and 3 and 4 times what they're supposed to cost. We buy products for our military and they come in at costs that are so far above what they were supposed to be because we don't have people that know what they're doing. When we look at the budget is bad to a large extent because we have people that have no idea as to what to do and how to buy. The Trump International is way under budget and way ahead of schedule, and we should be able to do that for our country.
We're well behind schedule, so I want to move to our next segment. We move into our next segment talking about America's direction, and let's start by talking about race. The share of Americans who say race relations are bad in this country is the highest it's been in decades, much of it amplified by shootings of African Americans by police, as we've seen recently in Charlotte and Tulsa. Race has been a big issue in this campaign, and one of you is going to have to bridge a very wide and bitter gap. So how do you heal the divide? Secretary Clinton, you get 2 minutes on this.
Well, you're right. Race remains a significant challenge in our country. Unfortunately, race still determines too much. Often determines where people live, determines what kind of education in their public schools they can get, and yes, it determines how they're treated in the criminal justice system. We've just seen those 2 tragic examples in both Tulsa and Charlotte. And we've got to do several things at the same time. We have to
He's written a lot of books
trust
about business
between communities
They all
and the
seem
police.
to end at chapter 11.
We have to work to make sure that our police are using the best training, the best techniques, that they're well prepared to use force only when necessary. Everyone should be respected by the law, and everyone should respect the law. Right now, that's not the case in a lot of our neighborhoods. So I have, ever since the first day of my campaign, called for criminal justice reform. I've laid out a platform that I think would begin to remedy some of the problems we have in the criminal justice system. But we also have to recognize, in addition to the challenges that we face with policing, there are so many good, brave police officers who equally want reform. So we have to bring communities together in order to begin working on that as a mutual goal. And we've got to get guns out of the hands of people who should not have them. The gun epidemic is the leading cause of death of young African American men, more than the next 9 causes put together. So we have to do two things, as I said. We have to restore trust. We have to work with the police. We have to make sure they respect the communities and the communities respect them. And we have to tackle the plague of gun violence, which is a big contributor to a lot of the problems that we're seeing today.
All right, Mr. Trump, you have 2 minutes. How do you heal the divide?
Well, first of all, Secretary Clinton doesn't want to use a couple of words, and that's law and order. And we need law and order. If we don't have it, we're not going to have a country. And when I look at what's going on in Charlotte, a city I love, a city where I have investments, when I look at what's going on throughout various parts of our country, whether it's, I mean, I can just keep naming them all day long. We need law and order in our country. And I just got today, as you know, the endorsement of the Fraternal Order of Police. We just came in. We have endorsements from, I think, almost every police group, a large percentage of them in the United States. We have a situation where we have our inner cities, African Americans, Hispanics, are living in hell because it's so dangerous. You walk down the street, you get shot. In Chicago, they've had thousands of shootings, thousands, since January 1st. Thousands of shootings. And I'm saying, where is this? Is this a war-torn country? What are we doing? And we have to stop the violence. We have to bring back law and order. In a place like Chicago, where thousands of people have been killed, thousands over the last number of years. In fact, almost 4,000 have been killed since Barack Obama became president. Almost 4,000 people in Chicago have been killed. We have to bring back law and order. Now, whether or not in a place like Chicago you do stop and frisk, which worked very well, Mayor Giuliani is here, it worked very well in New York. It brought the crime rate way down. But you take the gun away from criminals that shouldn't be having it. We have gangs roaming the street, and in many cases, they're illegally here, illegal immigrants, and they have guns, and they shoot people. And we have to be very strong, and we have to be very vigilant. We have to know what we're doing. Right now, our police, in many cases, are afraid to do anything. We have to protect our inner cities because African-American communities are being decimated by crime.
Your 2 minutes has expired, but I do want to follow up. Stop and frisk was ruled unconstitutional in New York because it largely singled out Black and Hispanic young men.
No, you're wrong. It went before a judge who was a very against police judge. It was taken away from her, and our new mayor, refused to go forward with the case. They would have won an appeal. If you look at it throughout the country, there are many places where
the argument is that it's a form of racial profile.
No, the argument is that we have to take the guns away from these people that have them and that are bad people that shouldn't have them. These are felons. These are people that are bad people that shouldn't be. When you have 3,000 shootings in Chicago from January 1st, when you have 4,000 people killed in Chicago by guns from the beginning of the presidency of Barack Obama, his hometown, you have to have stop and frisk. You need more police. You need a better community relation. You don't have good community relations in Chicago. It's terrible. I have property there. It's terrible what's going on in Chicago. But when you look, and Chicago's not the only, you go to Ferguson, you go to so many different places. You need better relationships. I agree with Secretary Clinton on this. You need better relationships between the communities and the police, because in some cases it's not good. But you look at Dallas, where the relationships were really studied. The relationships were really a beautiful thing. And then 5 police officers were killed one night very violently. So there's some bad things going on, some really bad things.
Secretary Clinton,
but we need, Lester, we need law and order. And we need law and order in the inner cities, because the people that are most affected by what's happening are African American and Hispanic people. And it's very unfair to them what our politicians are allowing to happen.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, I've heard Donald say this at his rallies, and it's really unfortunate that he paints such a dire, negative picture of Black communities in our country. You know, the vibrancy of the Black church, the black businesses that employ so many people, the opportunities that so many families are working to provide for their kids. There's a lot that we should be proud of and we should be supporting and lifting up. But we do always have to make sure we keep people safe. There are the right ways of doing it, and then there are ways that are ineffective. Stop and frisk was found to be unconstitutional, and in part because it was ineffective. It did not do what it needed to do. Now, I believe in community policing, and in fact, violent crime is 1/2 of what it was in 1991. Property crime is down 40%. We just don't want to see it creep back up. We've had 25 years of very good cooperation, but there were some problems, some unintended consequences. Too many young African American and Latino men ended up in jail for nonviolent offenses, and it's just a fact that if you're a young African American man and you do the same thing as a young white man, you are more likely to be arrested, charged, convicted, and incarcerated. So we've got to address the systemic racism in our criminal justice system. We cannot just say law and order. We have to say we have to come forward with a plan that is going to divert people from the criminal justice system, deal with mandatory minimum sentences, which have put too many people away for too long for doing too little. We need to have more second chance programs. I'm glad that we're ending private prisons in the federal system. I want to see them ended in the state system. You shouldn't have a profit motivation to fill prison cells with young Americans. So there are some positive ways we can work on this. And I believe strongly that common sense gun safety measures would assist us right now. And this is something Donald has supported along with the gun lobby. Right now, we've got too many military-style weapons on the streets. In a lot of places, our police are outgunned. We need comprehensive background checks, and we need to keep guns out of the hands of those who will do harm. And we finally need to pass a prohibition on anyone who's on the terrorist watch list from being able to buy a gun in our country. If you're too dangerous to fly, you are too dangerous to buy a gun. So there are things we can do, and we ought to do it in a bipartisan way.
Secretary Clinton, last week you said we've got to do everything possible to improve policing, to go right at implicit bias. Do you believe that police are implicitly biased against black people?
Lester, I think implicit bias is a problem for everyone, not just police. I think, unfortunately, too many of us in our great country jump to conclusions about each other. And therefore, I think we need all of us to be asking hard questions about, why am I feeling this way? But when it comes to policing, since it can have literally fatal consequences, I have said in my first budget we would put money into that budget to help us deal with implicit bias by retraining a lot of our police officers. I've met with a group of very distinguished, experienced police chiefs a few weeks ago. They admit it's an issue. They've got a lot of concerns. Mental health is one of the biggest concerns because now police are having to handle a lot of really difficult mental health problems on the street. They want support. They want more training. They want more assistance. And I think the federal government could be in a position where we would offer and provide that.
I'd like to respond.
Please.
First of all, I agree, and a lot of people, even within my own party, want to give certain rights to people on watch lists and no-fly lists. I agree with you. When a person is on a watch list or a no-fly list, and I have the endorsement of the NRA, which I'm very proud of. These are very, very good people, and they're protecting the Second Amendment. But I think we have to look very strongly at no-fly lists and watch lists, and when people are on there, even if they shouldn't be on there, we'll help them legally, we'll help them get off. But I tend to agree with that quite strongly. I do want to bring up the fact that you were the one that brought up the word super predator about young black youth. And that's a term that I think was it's been horribly met, as you know. I think you've apologized for it. But I think it was a terrible thing to say. And when it comes to stop and frisk, you're talking about taking guns away. Well, I'm talking about taking guns away from gangs and people that use them. And I really don't think you disagree with me on this, if you want to know the truth. I think maybe there's a political reason why you can't say it, but I really don't believe. In New York City, stop and frisk, we had 2,200 murders, and stop and frisk brought it down to 500 murders. 500 murders is a lot of murders. Hard to believe. 500 is like supposed to be good. But we went from 2,200 to 500, and it was continued on by Mayor Bloomberg, and it was terminated by current mayor. But stop and frisk had a tremendous impact on the safety of New York City, tremendous beyond belief. So when you say it has no impact, it really did. It had a very, very big impact.
Well, it's also fair to say, if we're going to talk about mayors, that under the current mayor, crime has continued to drop, including murders. So there is...
You're wrong.
No, I'm not.
Murders are up. All right, you check.
New York has done an excellent job, and I give credit. I give credit across the board, going back to mayors, to police chiefs, because it has worked, and other communities need to come together to do what will work as well. Look, one murder is too many, but it is important that we learn about what has been effective and not go to things that sound good that really did not have the kind of impact that we would want. Who disagrees with keeping neighborhoods safe? But let's also add, no one should disagree about respecting the rights of young men who live in those neighborhoods. And so we need to do a better job of working again with the communities, faith communities, business communities, as well as the police, to try to deal with this problem.
This conversation is about race, and so, Mr. Trump, I have to ask you...
But I'd like to just respond, if I might.
Please, 20 seconds.
I'd just like to respond.
Please respond, then I've got to follow up.
Look, the African-American community has been let down by our politicians. They talk good around election time, like right now, and after the election, they said, see you later, I'll see you in 4 years. The African-American community, look, the community within the inner cities has been so badly treated. They've been abused and used in order to get votes by Democrat politicians, because that's what it is. They've controlled these communities for up to 100 years.
Mr. Trump,
unbroken. And I will tell you, you look at the inner cities, and I just left Detroit, and I just left Philadelphia, and you've seen me, I've been all over the place. You decided to stay home, and that's okay. But I will tell you, I've been all over, and I've met some of the greatest people I'll ever meet within these communities, and they are very, very upset with what their politicians have told them and what their politicians have done.
Mr. Trump,
I think Donald just criticized me for preparing for this debate. And yes, I did. And you know what else I prepared for? I prepared to be president, and I think that's a good thing.
Mr. Trump, for 5 years, you perpetuated a false claim that the nation's first black president was not a natural-born citizen. You questioned his legitimacy. In the last couple of weeks, you acknowledged what most Americans have accepted for years: the president was born in the United States. Can you tell us what took you so long?
I'll tell you just very simple to say. Sidney Blumenthal works for the campaign and very close friend of Secretary Clinton. And her campaign manager, Patty Doyle, went to, during the campaign, her campaign against President Obama, fought very hard. And you can go look it up, and you can check it out. And if you look at CNN this past week, Patty Solis Doyle was on Wolf Blitzer saying that this happened. Blumenthal sent McClatchy, highly respected reporter at McClatchy, to Kenya to find out about it. They were pressing it very hard. She failed to get the birth certificate. When I got involved, I didn't fail. I got him to give the birth certificate. So I'm satisfied with it, and I'll tell you why I'm satisfied with it.
That was
because I want to get on to defeating ISIS, because I want to get on to creating jobs, because I want to get on to having a strong border, because I want to get on to things that are very important to me and that are very important to the country.
I will let you respond. That's important, but I just want to get the answer here. the birth certificate was produced in 2011. You continued to tell the story and question the president's legitimacy in 2012, 13, 14, 15, as recently as January. So the question is, what changed your mind?
Well, nobody was pressing it. Nobody was caring much about it. I figured you'd ask the question tonight, of course, but nobody was caring much about it. But I was the one that got him to produce the birth certificate, and I think I did a good job. Secretary Clinton also fought it. I mean, you know, now everybody in mainstream is going to say, oh, that's not true. Look, it's true. Sidney Blumenthal sent a reporter. You just have to take a look at CNN last week, the interview with your former campaign manager, and she was involved. But just like she can't bring back jobs, she can't produce.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to follow up, and I will let you respond to that because there's a lot there. But we're talking about racial healing in this segment. What do you say to Americans?
Well, it was very, I say nothing. I say nothing because I was able to get him to produce it. He should have produced it a long time before. I say nothing. But let me just tell you, when you talk about healing, I think that I've developed very, very good relationships over the last little while with the African-American community. I think you can see that. And I feel that they really wanted me to come to that conclusion, and I think I did a great job and a great service, not only for the country, but even for the president, in getting him to produce his birth certificate.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, just listen to what you heard. And clearly, as Donald just admitted, he knew he was going to stand on this debate stage, and Lester Holt was going to be asking us questions, so he tried to put the whole racist birther lie to bed. But it can't be dismissed that easily. He has really started his political activity based on this racist lie that our first black president was not an American citizen. There was absolutely no evidence for it, but he persisted. He persisted year after year because some of his supporters, people that he was trying to bring into his fold, apparently believed it or wanted to believe it. But remember, Donald started his career back in 1973 being sued by the Justice Department for racial discrimination because he would not rent apartments in one of his developments to African Americans, and he made sure that the people who worked for him understood that was the policy. He actually was sued twice by the Justice Department. So he has a long record of engaging in racist behavior. And the birther lie was a very hurtful one. You know, Barack Obama is a man of great dignity, and I could tell how much it bothered him and annoyed him that this was being touted and used against him. But I like to remember what Michelle Obama said in her amazing speech at our Democratic National Convention. When they go low, we go high. And Barack Obama went high, despite Donald Trump's best efforts to bring him down.
Mr. Trump, you can respond, then we're going to move on to the next segment.
I would love to respond. First of all, I got to watch, in preparing for this, some of your debates against Barack Obama. You treated him with terrible disrespect. And I watched the way you talk now about how lovely everything is and how wonderful you are. It doesn't work that way. You were after him. You were trying to. You even sent out, or your campaign sent out, pictures of him in a certain garb. Very famous pictures. I don't think you can deny that. But just last week, your campaign manager said it was true. So when you try to act holier than thou, it really doesn't work. It really doesn't. Now, as far as the lawsuit, yes, when I was very young, I went into my father's company, had a real estate company in Brooklyn and Queens, and we, along with many, many other companies throughout the country, it was a federal lawsuit, were sued. We settled the suit with no admission of guilt. It was very easy to do, but they sued many people. I notice you bring that up a lot, and you know, I also notice the very nasty commercials that you do on me in so many different ways, which I don't do on you. Maybe I'm trying to save the money. But frankly, I look at that and I say, isn't that amazing? Because I settled that lawsuit with no admission of guilt. But that was a lawsuit brought against many real estate firms, and it's just one of those things. I'll go on one step further. In Palm Beach, Florida, tough community, a brilliant community, a wealthy community, probably the wealthiest community there is in the world. I opened a club and really got great credit for it. No discrimination against African Americans, against Muslims, against anybody. And it's a tremendously successful club, and I'm so glad I did it. And I have been given great credit for what I did, and I'm very, very proud of it. And that's the way I feel. That is the true way I feel.
Our next segment is called Securing America. We want to start with a 21st century war happening every day in this country. Our institutions are under cyber attack, and our secrets are being stolen. So my question is, who's behind it, and how do we fight it? Secretary Clinton, this answer goes to you.
Well, I think cybersecurity, cyber warfare, will be one of the biggest challenges facing the next president, because clearly we're facing at this point two different kinds of adversaries. There are the independent hacking groups that do it mostly for commercial reasons, to try to steal information that they then can use to make money. But increasingly, we are seeing cyber attacks coming from states, organs of states. The most recent and troubling of these has been Russia. There's no doubt now that Russia has used cyber attacks against all kinds of organizations in our country, and I am deeply concerned about this. I know Donald's very praiseworthy of Vladimir Putin, but Putin is playing a really tough, long game here. And one of the things he's done is to let loose cyber attackers to hack into government files, to hack into personal files, hack into the Democratic National Committee. And we recently have learned that, that this is one of their preferred methods of trying to wreak havoc and collect information. We need to make it very clear, whether it's Russia, China, Iran, or anybody else, the United States has much greater capacity. And we are not going to sit idly by and permit state actors to go after our information, our private sector information or our public sector information. And we're going to have to make it clear that we don't want to use the kinds of tools that we have. We don't want to engage in a different kind of warfare, but we will defend the citizens of this country. And the Russians need to understand that. I think they've been treating it as almost a probing. How far would we go? How much would we do? And that's why I was so shocked when Donald publicly invited Putin to hack into Americans. That is just unacceptable. It's one of the reasons why 50 national security officials who served in Republican administration have said that Donald is unfit to be the commander-in-chief. It's comments like that that really worry people who understand the threats that we face.
Mr. Trump, you have 2 minutes in the same question. Who's behind it? And how do we fight it?
I do want to say that I was just endorsed, and more are coming next week. It'll be over 200 admirals, many of them are here, admirals and generals endorsed me to lead this country. That just happened, and many more are coming, and I'm very proud of it. In addition, I was just endorsed by ICE. They've never endorsed anybody before on immigration. I was just endorsed by ICE. I was just recently endorsed 16,500 Border Patrol agents. So when Secretary Clinton talks about this, I mean, I'll take the admirals and I'll take the generals any day over the political hacks that I see that have led our country so brilliantly over the last 10 years with their knowledge, okay? Because look at the mess that we're in. Look at the mess that we're in. As far as the cyber, I agree to parts of what Secretary Clinton said. We should be better than anybody else, and perhaps we're not. I don't think anybody knows it was Russia that broke into the DNC. She's saying Russia, 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 but maybe it was. I mean, it could be Russia, but it could also be China. It could also be lots of other people. It also could be somebody sitting on their bed that weighs 400 pounds, okay? You don't know who broke in to DNC, but what did we learn with DNC? We learned that Bernie Sanders was taken advantage of by your people, by Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Look what happened to her. But Bernie Sanders was taken advantage of. That's what we learned. Now, whether that was Russia, whether that was China, whether it was another country, we don't know. Because the truth is, under President Obama, we've lost control of things that we used to have control over. We came in with the Internet, we came up with the Internet, and I think Secretary Clinton and myself would agree very much. When you look at what ISIS is doing with the Internet, they're beating us at our own game, ISIS. So we have to get very, very tough on cyber and cyber warfare. It is a huge problem. I have a son. He's 10 years old. He has computers. He is so good with these computers. It's unbelievable. The security aspect of cyber is very, very tough, and maybe it's hardly doable. But I will say we are not doing the job we should be doing. But that's true throughout our whole governmental society. We have so many things that we have to do better, Lester, and certainly cyber is one of them.
Secretary Clinton?
Well, I think there are a number of issues that we should be addressing. I have put forth a plan to defeat ISIS. It does involve going after them online. I think we need to do much more with our tech companies to prevent ISIS and their operatives from being able to use the Internet to radicalize, even direct people in our country and Europe and elsewhere. But we also have to intensify our air strikes against ISIS and eventually support our Arab and Kurdish partners to be able to actually take out ISIS in Raqqa, end their claim of being a caliphate. We're making progress. Our military is assisting in Iraq, and we're hoping that within the year we'll be able to push ISIS out of Iraq and then, really squeeze them in Syria. But we have to be cognizant of the fact that they've had foreign fighters coming to volunteer for them, foreign money, foreign weapons. So we have to make this the top priority, and I would also do everything possible to take out their leadership. I was involved in a number of efforts to take out al-Qaeda leadership when I was Secretary of State, including, of course, taking out bin Laden, and I think we need to go after Baghdadi as well, make that one of our organizing principles, because we've got to defeat ISIS, and we've got to do everything we can to disrupt their propaganda efforts online.
You mentioned ISIS, and we think of ISIS certainly as over there, but there are American citizens who have been inspired to commit acts of terror on American soil. The latest incident, of course, the bombings we just saw in New York and New Jersey, the knife attack at a mall in Minnesota, and the last year, deadly attacks in San Bernardino and Orlando. I'll ask this to both of you. Tell us specifically how you would prevent homegrown attacks by American citizens, Mr. Trump.
Well, first I have to say one thing, very important. Secretary Clinton is talking about taking out ISIS. We will take out ISIS. Well, President Obama and Secretary Clinton created a vacuum the way they got out of Iraq. Because they got out, they shouldn't have been in, but once they got in, the way they got out was a disaster. And ISIS was formed. So she talks about taking them out. She's been doing it a long time. She's been trying to take them out for a long time. But they wouldn't have even been formed if they left some troops behind, like 10,000 or maybe something more than that. And then you wouldn't have had them. Or, as I've been saying for a long time, and I think you'll agree because I said it to you once, had we taken the oil, and we should have taken the oil, ISIS would not have been able to form either because the oil was their primary source of income. And now they have the oil all over the place, including the oil, a lot of the oil in Libya, which was another one of her disasters.
Secretary Clinton.
Well, I hope the fact checkers are turning up the volume and really working hard. Donald supported the invasion of Iraq.
Wrong.
That is absolutely
wrong.
Proved over and over again.
Wrong.
He actually advocated for the actions we took in Libya and urged that Gaddafi be taken out after actually doing some business with him one time. But the larger point, he says this constantly, is George W. Bush made the agreement about when American troops would leave Iraq, not Barack Obama. And the only way that American troops could have stayed in Iraq is to get an agreement from the then Iraqi government that would have protected our troops. And the Iraqi government would not give that. But let's talk about the question you asked, Lester. The question you asked is, what do we do here in the United States? That's the most important part of this. How do we prevent attacks? How do we protect our people? And I think we've got to have an intelligence surge where we are looking for every scrap of information. I was so proud of law enforcement in New York, in Minnesota, in New Jersey. You know, they responded so quickly, so professionally to the attacks that occurred by Rahami, and they brought him down. And we may find out more information because he is still alive, which may prove to be an intelligence benefit. So we've got to do everything we can to vacuum up intelligence from Europe, from the Middle East. That means we've got to work more closely with our allies. And that's something that Donald has been very dismissive of. We're working with NATO, the longest military alliance in the history of the world, to really turn our attention to terrorism. We're working with our friends in the Middle East, many of which, as you know, are Muslim-majority nations. Donald has consistently insulted Muslims abroad, Muslims at home, when we need to be cooperating with Muslim nations and with the American Muslim community. They're on the front lines. They can provide information to us that we might not get anywhere else. They need to have close working cooperation with law enforcement in these communities, not be alienated and pushed away, as some of Donald's rhetoric, unfortunately, has led to.
Mr. Well, I'd have to respond.
Please respond.
The Secretary said very strongly about working with. We've been working with them for many years. And we have the greatest mess anyone's ever seen. You look at the Middle East, it's a total mess. Under your direction to a large extent. But you look at the Middle East, you started the Iran deal. That's another beauty where you have a country that was ready to fall. I mean, they were doing so badly. They were choking on the sanctions, and now they're going to be actually probably a major power at some point pretty soon, the way they're going. But when you look at NATO, I was asked on a major show, what do you think of NATO? And you have to understand, I'm a business person. I did really well, but I have common sense. And I said, well, I'll tell you, I haven't given lots of thought to NATO, but two things. Number one, the 28 countries of NATO, many of them aren't paying their fair share. Number two, and that bothers me because we should be, as we're defending them, and they should at least be paying us what they're supposed to be paying by treaty and contract. And number two, I said, and very strongly, NATO could be obsolete because, and I was very strong on this, and it was actually covered very accurately in the New York Times, which is unusual for the New York Times, to be honest. But I said they do not focus on terror. And I was very strong, and I said it numerous times. And about 4 months ago, I read on the front page of the Wall Street Journal that NATO is opening up a major terror division. And I think that's great. And I think we should get, because we pay approximately 73% of the cost of NATO. It's a lot of money to protect other people. But I'm all for NATO. But I said they have to focus on terror also. And they're going to do that. And that was, believe me, I'm sure I'm not going to get credit for it, but that was largely because of what I was saying and my criticism of NATO. I think we have to get NATO to go into the Middle East with us, in addition to surrounding nations, and we have to knock the hell out of ISIS, and we have to do it fast. When ISIS formed in this vacuum created by Barack Obama and Secretary Clinton, and believe me, you were the ones that took out the troops. Not only that, you named the day. They couldn't believe it. They sat back probably and said, I can't believe it. They said, no, wait a minute.
We've covered
when they formed, this is something that never should have happened. It should have never happened. Now, you're talking about taking out ISIS, but you were there and you were Secretary of State when it was a little infant. Now it's in over 30 countries. And you're going to stop them? I don't think so.
Mr. Trump, a lot of these are judgment questions. You had supported the war in Iraq before the invasion. What makes your judgment?
I did not support the war in Iraq.
2002.
That is a mainstream media nonsense put out by her, because she, frankly, I think the best person in her campaign is mainstream media.
My question is, since you
would you like to hear?
Why is your
I was against the war. Wait a minute. I was against the war in Iraq, just so you put it out.
The record shows otherwise.
The record does not show that.
Why is your judgment?
The record shows that I'm right. When I did an interview with Howard Stern, very lightly, first time anyone's asked me that, I said, very lightly, I don't know, maybe, who knows, essentially. I then did an interview with Neil Cavuto. We talked about the economy is more important. I then spoke to Sean Hannity, which everybody refuses to call Sean Hannity, I had numerous conversations with Sean Hannity at Fox, and Sean Hannity said, and he called me the other day, and I spoke to him about it. He said, you were totally against the war, because he was for the war.
Why is your judgment better than...
And that was before the war started. Sean Hannity said very strongly to me and other people, he's willing to say, but nobody wants to call him, I was against the war. He said, you used to have fights with me because Sean was in favor of the war. And I understand that side also, not very much, because we should have never been there. But nobody called Sean Hannity. And then they did an article in a major magazine shortly after the war started, I think in '04, but they did an article which had me totally against the war in Iraq. And one of your compatriots said, you know, whether it was before or right after, Trump was definitely, because if you read this article, there's no doubt. But if somebody, and I'll ask the press, if somebody would call up Sean Hannity, this was before the war started, he and I used to have arguments about the war. I said it's a terrible and a stupid thing. It's going to destabilize the Middle East, and that's exactly what it's done. It's been a disaster.
My reference was to what you had said in 2002, and my question was, why is your judgment any different than Mrs. Clinton?
Well, I have much better judgment than she does. There's no question about that. I also have a much better temperament than she has. You know, I have a much better. She spent, let me tell you, she spent hundreds of millions of dollars on an advertising. You know, they get Madison Avenue into a room, they put names. Oh, temperament, let's go after. I think my strongest asset, maybe by far, is my temperament. I have a winning temperament. I know how to win. She does not know how to win. Wait. The AFL-CIO the other day, behind the blue screen, I don't know who you were talking to, Secretary Clinton, but you were totally out of control. I said, there's a person with a temperament that's got a problem.
Secretary Clinton.
Woo, okay. Let's talk about two important issues that were briefly mentioned by Donald. First, NATO. You know, NATO, as a military alliance, has something called Article 5, and basically it says this: an attack on one is an attack on all. And do you know the only time it's ever been invoked? After 9/11, when the 28 nations of NATO said that they would go to Afghanistan with us to fight terrorism, something that they still are doing by our side. With respect to Iran, when I became Secretary of State, Iran was weeks away from having enough nuclear material to form a bomb. They had mastered the nuclear fuel cycle under the Bush administration. They had built covert facilities. They had stocked them with centrifuges that were whirling away. And we had sanctioned them. I voted for every sanction against Iran when I was in the Senate, but it wasn't enough. So I spent a year and a half putting together a coalition that included Russia and China to impose the toughest sanctions on Iran. And we did drive them to the negotiating table. And my successor, John Kerry, and President Obama got a deal that put a lid on Iran's nuclear program without firing a single shot. That's diplomacy. That's coalition building. That's working with other nations. The other day, I saw Donald saying that there were some Iranian sailors on a ship in the waters off of Iran, and they were taunting American sailors who were on a nearby ship. He said, you know, if they taunted our sailors, I'd blow them out of the water and start another war. That's not good judgment. That is not the right temperament to be commander-in-chief, to be taunted. And the worst part of what we've heard Donald say has been about nuclear weapons. He has said repeatedly that he didn't care if other nations got nuclear weapons, Japan, South Korea, even Saudi Arabia. It has been the policy of the United States, Democrats and Republicans, to do everything we could to reduce the proliferation of nuclear weapons. He even said, well, you know, if there were a nuclear war in East Asia, well, you know, that's fine. You know, have a good time, folks. And in fact, his cavalier attitude about nuclear weapons is so deeply troubling. That is the #1 threat we face in the world, and it becomes particularly threatening if terrorists ever get their hands on any nuclear material. So a man who can be provoked by a tweet should not have his fingers anywhere near the nuclear codes, as far as I think anyone with any sense about this should be concerned.
That line's getting a little bit old, I must say. Listen,
it's a good one, though.
I would like to,
well describes the problem.
It's not an accurate one at all. It's not an accurate one. So I just want to give a lot of things, and just to respond, I agree with her on one thing. The single greatest problem the world has is nuclear armament, nuclear weapons. Not global warming like you think and your president thinks. Nuclear is the single greatest threat. Just to go down the list, we defend Japan, we defend Germany, we defend South Korea, we defend Saudi Arabia, we defend countries. They do not pay us what they should be paying us because we are providing tremendous service and we're losing a fortune. That's why we're losing. We lose on everything. I say, who makes these? We lose on everything. Well, I said that it's very possible that if they don't pay a fair share, because this isn't 40 years ago where we could do what we're doing. We can't defend Japan, a behemoth selling us cars by the million.
We need to move on.
Wait, but it's very important. All I said was they may have to defend themselves or they have to help us out. We're a country that owes $20 trillion. They have to help us out. As far as the nuclear is concerned, I agree. It is the single greatest threat that this country has.
Which leads my next question as we enter our last segment here still on the subject of securing America. On nuclear weapons, President Obama reportedly considered changing the nation's longstanding policy on first use. Do you support the current policy? Mr. Trump, you have 2 minutes on that.
Well, I have to say that, for what Secretary Clinton was saying about nuclear with Russia, she's very cavalier in the way she talks about various countries. But Russia's been expanding. They have a much newer capability than we do. We have not been updating from the new standpoint. I looked the other night, I was seeing B-52s. They're old enough that your father, your grandfather could be flying them. We are not keeping up with other countries. I would like everybody to end it, just get rid of it, but I would certainly not do first strike. I think that once the nuclear alternative happens, it's over. At the same time, we have to be prepared. I can't take anything off the table because you look at some of these countries. You look at North Korea. We're doing nothing there. China should solve that problem for us. China should go into North Korea. China is totally powerful as it relates to North Korea. And by the way, another one powerful is the worst deal I think I've ever seen negotiated that you started is the Iran deal. Iran is one of their biggest trading partners. Iran has power over North Korea. And when they made that horrible deal with Iran, they should have included the fact that they do something with respect to North Korea. And they should have done something with respect to Yemen and all these other places. And when asked to Secretary Kerry, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you add other things into the deal? One of the great giveaways of all time, including $400 million in cash. Nobody's ever seen that before. That turned out to be wrong. It was actually $1.7 billion in cash. Obviously, I guess, for the hostages, it certainly looks that way. So you say to yourself, why didn't they make the right deal? This is one of the worst deals ever made by any country in history. The deal with Iran will lead to nuclear problems. All they have to do is sit back 10 years, and they don't have to do much, and they're going to end up getting nuclear. I met with Bibi Netanyahu the other day. Believe me, he is not a happy camper.
All right, Mrs. Clinton, Secretary Clinton, you have 2 minutes.
Let me start by saying words matter. Words matter when you run for president, and they really matter when you are president. And I want to reassure our allies in Japan and South Korea and elsewhere that we have mutual defense treaties and we will honor them. It is essential that America's word be good. And so I know that this campaign has caused some questioning and some worries on the part of many leaders across the globe. I've talked with a number of them. But I want to, on behalf of myself and I think on behalf of a majority of the American people, say that, our word is good. It's also important that we look at the entire global situation. There's no doubt that we have other problems with Iran, but personally I'd rather deal with the other problems having put that lid on their nuclear program than still to be facing that. And Donald never tells you what he would do. Would he have started a war? Would he have bombed Iran? If he's going to criticize a deal that has been very successful in giving us access to Iranian facilities that we never had before, then he should tell us what his alternative would be. But it's like his plan to defeat ISIS. He says it's a secret plan, but the only secret is that he has no plan. So we need to be more precise in how we talk about these issues. People around the world follow our presidential campaigns so closely, trying to get hints about what we will do. Can they rely on us? Are we going to lead the world with strength and in accordance with our values? That's what I intend to do. I intend to be a leader of our country that people can count on, both here at home and around the world, to make decisions that will further peace and prosperity, but also stand up to bullies, whether they're abroad or at home. We cannot let those who would try to destabilize the world, to interfere with American interests and security, to be given any opportunities at all.
Is expired.
Let's do one thing I'd like to say.
Very quickly.
I will go very quickly, but I will tell you that Hillary will tell you to go to her website and read all about how to defeat ISIS, which she could have defeated by never having it, get going in the first place. Right now, it's getting tougher and tougher to defeat them because they're in more and more places, more and more states, more and more nations.
Mr. Trump.
And it's a big problem. And as far as Japan is concerned, I want to help all of our allies. But we are losing billions and billions of dollars. We cannot be the policeman of the world. We cannot protect countries all over the world where they're not paying us what we need.
We have just a few final
questions. She doesn't
questions.
say that because she's got no business ability. We need heart. We need a lot of things. But you have to have some basic ability. And sadly, she doesn't have that. All of the things that she's talking about could have been taken care of during the last 10 years, let's say, while she had great power. But they weren't taken care of. And if she ever wins this race, they won't be taken care of.
Mr. Trump, this year.
Stamina. Did you ask me a question? You have to be able to negotiate our trade deals. You have to be able to negotiate, that's right, with Japan, with Saudi Arabia. I mean, can you imagine we're defending Saudi Arabia, and with all of the money they have, we're defending them and they're not paying? All you have to do is speak to them. Wait, you have so many different things you have to be able to do, and I don't believe that Hillary has the stamina.
Let's let her respond.
Well, as soon as he travels to 112 countries and negotiates a peace deal, a ceasefire, a release of dissidents, an opening of new opportunities in nations around the world, or even spends 11 hours testifying in front of a congressional committee, he can talk to me about stamina.
The world, let me tell you, Hillary has experience, but it's bad experience. We have made so many bad deals during the last, so she's got experience, that I agree, but it's bad experience. Whether it's the Iran deal that you're so in love with, where we gave them $150 billion back, whether it's the Iran deal, whether it's anything you can name, you almost can't name a good deal. I agree. She's got experience, but it's bad experience. And this country can't afford to have another 4 years of that kind of experience.
We are at the final question.
One thing, Lester, is, he tried to switch from looks to stamina. But this is a man who has called women pigs, slobs, and dogs. And someone who has said pregnancy is an inconvenience to employers, who has said women don't deserve equal pay unless they do as good a job as men. And one of the worst things he said was about a woman in a beauty contest. He loves beauty contests, supporting them and hanging around them. And he called this woman Miss Piggy. Then he called her Miss Housekeeping because she was Latina. Donald, she has a name.
Where did you find
her
it?
name
Where
is
did you find
Alicia
this?
Machado.
Where did you find
and
it?
she has become a U.S. citizen, and you can bet she's going to vote this November.
Okay, good. Let me just tell you.
Mr. Trump, we'll just take 10 seconds, and then we're going to have a final question.
Hillary is hitting me with tremendous commercials. Some of it said in entertainment. Some of it said somebody who's been very vicious to me, Rosie O'Donnell. I said very tough things to her, and I think everybody would agree that she deserves it, and nobody feels sorry for her. But you want to know the truth? I was going to say something extremely rough to Hillary, to her family, and I said to myself, I can't do it. I just can't do it. It's inappropriate. It's not nice. But she spent hundreds of millions of dollars on negative ads on me, many of which are absolutely untrue. They're untrue and they're misrepresentations. And I will tell you this, Lester, it's not nice, and I don't deserve that. But it's certainly not a nice thing that she's done. It's hundreds of millions of ads, and the only gratifying thing is I saw the polls come in today, and with all of that money, over $200 million is spent, and I'm either winning or tied, and I've spent practically nothing.
One of you will not win this election. So my final question to you tonight, are you willing to accept the outcome as the will of the voters? Secretary Clinton?
Well, I support our democracy. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But I certainly will support the outcome of this election. And I know Donald's trying very hard to plant doubts about it, but I hope the people out there understand this election's really up to you. It's not about us so much as it is about you and your families and the kind of country and future you want. So I sure hope you will get out and vote as though your future depended on it, because I think it does.
Mr. Trump, very quickly, the same question. Will you accept the outcome as the will of the voters?
I want to make America great again. We are a nation that is seriously troubled. We're losing our jobs. People are pouring into our country. The other day, we were deporting 800 people, and perhaps they passed the wrong button, they pressed the wrong button, or perhaps, worse than that, it was corruption. But these people that we were going to deport for good reason ended up becoming citizens. And it was 800, and now it turns out it might be 1,800, and they don't even know.
Will you accept
Look,
the outcome
here's
of
the
the
story.
election?
I want to make America great again. I'm going to be able to do it. I don't believe Hillary will. The answer is, if she wins, I will absolutely support her.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us. That concludes our debate for this evening, a spirited one. We covered a lot of ground, not everything, as I suspected we would. The next presidential debates are scheduled for October 9th at Washington University in St. Louis and October 19th at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. The conversation will continue. A reminder, the vice presidential debate is scheduled for October 4th at Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia. My thanks to Hillary Clinton and to Donald Trump and to Hofstra University for hosting us tonight. Good night, everyone.
Thanks, Lester.
Very much. Thank you.
Go, Donald! We love you!
Well, the first presidential debate of 2016 among primary candidates is over, and it appears everyone has survived. Beyond that, we were expecting a fiery hour and a half, and as Lester Holt put it just a moment ago, we got it. It was certainly spirited and filled with, at many times, I thought,
All right, everybody, welcome back. You've been watching this all unfold live right there. Mary Kate, first reaction. What did you think of the debate here?
I thought Lester Holt did a really good job considering how much they talked over him.
Yes, I mean, you figure he had to moderate this 90-plus minute debate, and it's not easy when both candidates don't want to end at that 2-minute mark.
Yeah, and honestly, I think Hillary looked kind of tired.
She did. She looked very tired to me, and we were noticing something that maybe you guys, the viewers as well, were catching in on. those long blinks when she was trying to listen to Donald Trump or to Lester Holt. It was really taking us back a little.
There most of the time.
No.
Like maybe she was thinking about her next question or something. I don't know. She just seemed tired, and then Trump seemed fired up.
Yeah,
so
and
that's interesting.
From the get-go.
I don't say I was wrong, as I said 50-50 she collapses, 80% she, 90% she has a coughing fit. She didn't. I mean,
17 infusions. That'll help you.
She does look like hell, but not as bad as she looked a week ago.
Look, Bill's up there trying to gather some.
I love you. I'm not Dixie Mafia, KKK, Grand Dragon.
I'm gonna bringing him that cocaine. It's all good.
Has Trump left?
Looks like he has left, so Hillary's still.
Trump has left the building. We're done looking at Hillary. Proving how long she can sit up there with the colostomy bag with Bill Clinton. Whoa, Bill Clinton, please screw us over some more. You know, I was talking to a friend, you know, about these Nigeria scams where they get you to give $5,000 because Prince Abuba wants to give you $1 million, and then when the $1 million doesn't come, give me 10,000 more, you get $5 million, and then, oh my God, it's locked up in customs. Your money is there. If you just send us 5,000 more, you will get all this money. And you don't want to admit you've been conned, so you give the money. I was talking to folks, these scams on old ladies where the husband's dead, they know they're dead, they have databases, they send them emails, this young guy online, and then once they steal like $50,000 from him, like a year later, they go, actually, he wants to return the money to you, but it's held up in customs. Just give $5,000 to $10,000 more, you get the money in. And that's what this is. Just believe in it. Believe in the scam. The Clintons that steal all this money from charities, they give, you know, less than 6% of the money for little Haitian kids they steal. I mean, these are monsters.
Look, Hillary's literally getting a medal for completing. You know, when you play sports with the little kids and stuff, you get a medal for just competing. That's what she's getting right now. She's getting like, oh my God, you made it to the end. Not whether you did good or not, Alex. It's just she made it to the end. That's what it's all about.
All right, we have Roger Stone we're going to go to. Then we have Ashley, one of our reporters here, Beckford, who's a African-American lady, great patriot, longtime listener, great journalist. She went out to Schultz's Beer Garden earlier with Josh Owens, one of our camera people, and the Democrats said that she was a race traitor and evil, that she was just independent and not supporting Hillary. That report's coming up. We're going to bring Leanne McAdoo in. David Knight's in the other studio. Anybody from Buckley Hammond to Rob Dew to Marcos Morales to Adon Salazar to Mikhail Thalen to Darren McBreen to Kellen McBreen to anybody that wants to pop in with questions for Stone is welcome to. He's with us for 30 minutes. And then we're going to continue for at least 2 hours tonight with your phone calls later and a lot more. But let's bring McAdoo and others in. Roger Stone, I'll give you my 96-minute. I love how they went over. They're admitting now 100 million viewers or more, biggest thing in history, showing this awakening. Reagan's debate was 80 million. You were there helping in the campaign. I was saying he wasn't being tough enough, but I think he was safe, and he really came off as really polished, focused, and I mean, I would give him an A+ in this overall. I don't want to just sit here and grovel. I mean, early on, I was a little bit concerned. Am I wrong, or what do you make of this? I wish we would have heard about her stealing the Haitian, money, and giving less than 94%. I wish we would have heard about her founding ISIS, but I get he's got to kind of play to a larger audience. But that's what got him here, was being hardcore. We're not trying to play along with the system. We're trying to change the system. But regardless, I think he came off extremely presidential. She came off like a blown engine or like a mental patient. I mean, I'm sorry. What do you make of this, Roger Stone, former campaign head for Donald Trump?
Well, Alex, I agree with your assessment. I thought Trump did extremely well. There is always the challenge of debating a woman candidate and coming across as too harsh, yet his counterpunching was most effective. He seems to have followed the advice of Roger Ailes, television genius, who told him to remain thematic without getting down into the weeds and trying to out-wonk Hillary. He looked strong. He looked cool. He looked collected. And of course, her comments continue to be outrageous. She's against the mandatory sentences that have devastated the black community. Why? Those mandatory sentences were put in place by her husband, and she was the cheerleader for them.
That was really it. It was hard for me to shut up because it was upside down world, and I want to get to that and give you the floor in a moment.
Yeah,
but I mean, absolutely, Roger.
Quality to it. You know, it's like Alice in Wonderland. Their policies economically devastate the inner cities, but it's Donald Trump's fault. He's a racist.
I want to get to the deceptions, but I'm not being elitist here, but we're in this every day. We live this. Do we have a blind spot being informed that we see what a joke it is versus voters that are busy taking their kids to school, working 60 hours a week, paying the bills? Because to somebody informed, it looked like he literally mopped the floor with her. So what about that perception distortion? The polls show he's winning, but I don't want to get too confident. And then let's walk through the lies with Roger Stone of the StoneColdTruth.com.
Well, first of all, Alex, the debate was 2-on-1. Lester Holt functioning largely as a Clinton Quisling.
Yeah, I'm very sad. I agree. He really showed he was a shill. I'm very sad.
But pathetic. I mean, the country has cataclysmic problems with our economy, with trade, with immigration, with security, and he wants to talk about birtherism, which Hillary's lying again, undeniably started by her hatchet man, Sidney Blumenthal, promulgated by her campaign guru, Mark Penn, and pushed by her campaign manager, Patty Salas Doyle. Sorry, CNN. Sorry, PolitiFacts. Those are facts, indisputable facts. Just one example of the lies of Hillary Clinton.
I'm just speechless at this point because Trump looked more presidential. I'm not kissing his ass. It's true. He looked, under all the stress, skinnier, healthier, more focused, younger. This guy looks like he's 55, not 70. And I was thinking in my mind, he was finishing sentences as I was thinking of him. It's not that he's following what I say or you say. He's just so Americana, so dialed in. I'm not a messianic type guy, but I got to tell you, I'm thanking my lucky stars right now for Donald J. Trump, and I'm just admiring you for knowing the guy for 40 years.
Well, look, I thought it was an excellent debate. He pulled a couple punches, but it's the first of 3 debates. I mean, there's plenty of time to talk about what really happened in Libya. There's plenty of time to talk about the fact
this was just to look presidential. Does he pull the knives out next debate?
Well, I think he's going to go into the next debate even more comfortable and more confident than he went into this debate. You will notice in the Republican debates that he gained strength and confidence with every debate. And I think that is true here. I think he now realizes that she's a totally programmed, automatic kind of robot. I don't know what kind of drugs they had her hopped up on tonight, but she could barely keep her eyes open if you look
Well,
carefully.
that's anti-seizure medication. Absolutely. She did come off as an automaton. So what does that signify to you?
Well, Trump is genuine. Trump is authentic. Trump talks the way people talk around the dinner table. Hillary Clinton comes across as what she is, a skilled 30-year career politician. Unfortunately, with all her grandiose promises and plans, she and her party are responsible for the disaster of the last
That's
8
right.
years.
She can't dodge that. She's the author of our current pickle. She's not changed. I've asked some of the questions.
And now that George H.W. Bush has endorsed her, and I think Laura Bush is right behind,
What an
let's be
albatross.
candid. The Bushes and the Clintons together are responsible for the
Why
pickle
didn't she
we're
refuse that albatross? Are they so disconnected in his I'm sorry to say it, Alzheimer's, brain or I guess dementia brain that they thought that was a good thing?
Well, unfortunately, these people are very arrogant, and they actually think that people are still impressed with them. And they think they have a brand. How did Jeb do? That tells you how respected the Bush brigade is.
Their brand is total horse manure.
Just among Republicans.
All right, Roger Stone, best-selling author. We sell both his books and the Clinton rape shirt at InfoWarsStore.com. Key to fund this operation. We've done, since like 7 o'clock. That's basically 3 hours here. Not done one plug today. The Bill Clinton rape shirt, the Hillary for Prison Shirts limited edition. We're about to stop selling it. InfoWarsStore.com. We have new probiotics with 50 billion live cultures in it, 23 strains. Nobody's got something better. This just came out we have a whole cold facility here. It ships out with a cold pack. That purchase supports the broadcast. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, or call toll-free 888-253-3139. The internet is handed over in 5 days to the UN. We're not saying we'll shut it down overnight, but they're calling for censorship. That's my next question to you, Roger, and I'm going to give you the floor before other questions, the 20 minutes we have left with you. How does the empire strike back when, I'm not exaggerating, I look at these numbers and I pinch myself. Roger, we don't have triple the viewers and listeners now we had a year ago. It's 6-7 times. We're getting, instead of 6-7 million YouTube views a week, now with our affiliate channels, we're getting 20, 30, 40. We've had 42 million views the last week. I mean, on terrestrial radio, the ratings are, with small affiliates versus top affiliates, we're doubling Rush Limbaugh in some cities. The whole industry is freaking out right now. I mean, I quite frankly cannot believe this. InfoWars, right now, on an average day, has more viewers and listeners certified by ad agencies than Fox News. I'm not bragging. It's now happened. Paul Watson has videos daily with 5 million views. Okay, I mean, this is actually scary to be at this level. This just signifies their free fall. What is happening? Where does it go? How does the Empire Strikes Back? Then you've got the floor for like 5 minutes, whatever you want to cover. And I've got Joe Biggs and Kit Daniels here, our reporters. They've got questions. Roger Stone.
Well, I want to get right to Joe Biggs because he's always got great questions. But, Alex, I flew this morning from New York back to Miami. And frankly, when I got to the house, I was happy to say that my brain force had arrived and I was able to pop a few. So I had a productive day, but I've been putting in 18-hour days. It's an exciting time to be an American. It's an exciting time to be alive. I know from what you speak, because I cannot walk down the street in any city in America in which people don't say to me, hey, I saw you on with Alex Jones. I saw you on with InfoWar. Stay after Hillary. Keep the heat on Hillary. I have people high-fiving me. By the way, large number of African Americans high-fiving me about the truth that we expose here on InfoWars. They are going to try to steal this election between voter fraud and election theft, i.e. the manipulation of the computerized machines. And they're going to try to do it in the clear by utilizing this 1982 consent decree that the Republican National Committee unwisely signed with the federal courts. But that means they get to steal without, without legitimate observers. This is, beyond Trump's personal safety, my largest single concern, because the stench of defeat is in the air for Hillary and her cronies, and you can see it in their panic. You can see it in her eyes.
Roger Stone, you're on target. And again, you've been a pessimist all along. Now, clearly, Trump is tsunami wave, dominating and basically across the board. Hillary's given up Ohio, or correct me if I'm wrong, they're saying she's given up Ohio. And so if they stole the nomination from Sanders, the sky's the limit. Is the elite crazy enough to steal it and give it to an invalid that's having convulsions every hour?
The answer is yes. A war with Russia is a possibility. I disagree with those who say that Obama will look for an excuse to declare martial law and postpone the elections. The globalists will only do what they think they can get away with. They know there are too many right-thinking Americans who are
No, that's right. Obama's a puppet. They'll have a coup in stealing the election.
Right. Martial law will not work because too many people in this country have Second Amendment
but they won't
rights.
call it martial law. They'll fund race riots, though, and call it civil emergency, not to keep him in, but as a distraction. I mean, what is all the Soros and Ford Foundation tripling down with hundreds of millions the last 3 weeks for race riots? What's behind that, then?
I think they're going to try to have violence in our inner cities and somehow find a way, as they have previously, to try to blame Trump. The bad news is, I think the American people will see through it. It is the end for the globalists, and they know it, and they are
There's your headline. It's the end of the globalists as we know them. The people see through it. Show other things on your boiler here in the 15 minutes we have left. I'm going to get the crew to pop in with questions. Roger Stone, StoneColdTruth.com. What other curveballs should we be looking for? What other issues?
Well, first of all, there's now a premium on the next two debates. Big piece in the New York Times today saying that Trump won't show up for the second and third debate.
Made up, right?
Wrong. Front page story saying that Hillary is a great advocate for the black people, but Trump stands only for white people. Maybe Alex Burns and Patrick Healy of the New York Times should refresh themselves on the 1999 crime bill, which incarcerated an entire generation of young black men for the nonviolent crime of possession of small amounts of drugs and had harsher penalties for crack cocaine than powder
And by the way, you've been an advocate for decriminalization for 20 years. You have a lot of credibility when you talk about this.
Well, look, the Clintons have played more than their share of dog whistle politics. And Trump didn't quite nail the point tonight.
I agree.
Their
She's a total race pimp. That was her biggest, they calling him racist. This is the KKK Grand Wizard's knighted little princess that said black people are basically animals. This woman's a goddamn joke. Excuse me, God.
Well, it's even worse than that. She has destroyed black families, and more importantly, her economic policies, those of Obama and those of her husband, are abysmal. Black job creation during their years in office.
Let me ask you that. Why did black Americans get hit worse than anybody? Why do they double black unemployment? They seem like they're out to get them. Why, if somebody is your own constituent, why screw them?
Well, because it's a plantation. You know, tax and tax, spend and spend, elect and elect. I feel bad for African Americans who have given the Democrats their votes. There are no jobs. As you know, Alex, the job creation statistics in that community are so bad that they have to subtract those people who have stopped looking for work to try to dress them up and look better, and they still stink. They're still a national disgrace. Donald Trump will create jobs, as he has in his entire life, for black people. Look, I want to hear Joe Biggs' question.
That's right. Joe Biggs, Kit Daniels, pop in with your questions for Roger Stone.
I mean, I just got in from Charlotte a few hours ago, you know, where the...
I saw you pulled in right when the show started 3 hours
exactly.
ago.
And, you know, I didn't meet one person out there who liked Hillary Clinton. Not one of them. People you wouldn't even think that would like Trump were out there like, vote Trump, vote Trump, vote Trump.
We sent our reporter in Cleveland in, Millie Weaver, and the Democrats go, we can't find anybody undercover who support Trump. It's crazy. All the Democrats we know, they're on video undercover. They're like Veritas, they say no one supports her. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't find anybody. I wore my Hillary for President shirt one day, and they were just like clapping. Like Hillary is going to continue this whole... What we're living through every day, everything that we go through in the inner city is going to continue if she becomes president.
I want you to come back with this, but what about the polls? I know we want to be, quote, scientific, but they admit they're push polls, fake numbers, more Democrats sampled. We can't find Democrats to support her unless they're super rich, white, elite areas in Austin or other areas. I mean, I'm serious, Roger. I don't see how it isn't a giant landslide for Trump because, I mean, we can't find these people.
I'd like to see the launch of this poll mole program that Dr. Richard Davis is developing, where you would have a multi-million-dollar national sample, and therefore the margin of error would be infinitesimal, less than a point. That's how we keep the pollsters honest, because as you know, Alex, the precursor to stealing the election is to create this phony expectation level by inflating the number of Democrats in the national polls. There is an intensity gap here between Hillary and Donald
She doesn't
Trump.
get crowds. Nobody shows up.
I can't find anybody who's for her.
Kit Daniels?
Yeah. The fact remains that Hillary has the worst poll numbers among African Americans since John F. Kennedy in 1960. I don't even think she's going to hit 75%.
Well, we got like 25% of black males, 16% of females.
On average, a Democratic candidate for the president, win or lose, gets at least 87% of African American voters. So my question to you is, will the Democrats, it seems like as they're going to keep trying to push Hillary into office, but they're going to destroy themselves, kind of like how the Republican Party almost destroyed themselves by trying to put Jeb Bush and
Sure, the arrogance.
Yeah.
I mean, what about record numbers of Hispanic males saying they're going for Trump? What record numbers of black males going for Trump? What is this bellwether, Roger Stone?
There's definitely something going on there. Now, in all honesty, Trump could greatly improve his standing with black voters if he would talk more about his economic program, because the black people I know want a piece of the American pie. They want economic prosperity. The Clinton-Obama policies have devastated their communities. They have no upward mobility. They have terrible schools, no job training, and no job opportunities. Trump is the candidate of growth. He says, vote for me, you have nothing to lose. I would say, vote for Trump, you have everything to gain. We've tried it their way.
Sure.
Those who are trained to govern, the Harvard, Yale experts, have been running the country for 30 years.
Let's talk about October surprises, our surprises, their surprises. Clearly populism's rising worldwide, Roger. Jump in anytime, gentlemen. What could they pull? A war with Russia, an economic collapse? CNN had this op-ed guy going, don't worry, something's big's coming. Trump's going to be in trouble. Some big crisis he can't control. So if you're in the little beady-eyed brains of Hillary and, Obama and the globalists, what do you do, Roger Stone? And then I want to get your takes on that.
A reporter at the New York Post has warned me that the Clintons are going to try to smear Donald Trump, claiming that it is he who had a relationship with the convicted pedophile Clinton Foundation donor, Jeffrey Epstein. There's no question that Mr. Trump knows Epstein because Epstein was a member of his private club. A private club, as Trump said tonight, open to any individual who has the money to join. Jews, blacks, Hispanics, unlike the other clubs in Palm Beach, which are restricted. Trump has no relationship with Epstein beyond the casual. It's Bill Clinton who visited Epstein's hedonistic private island.
So you're saying, get ready, they're going to tie him to the pedophile plane that Clinton flew on all these scores of times that Trump did.
They're definitely going to try. It's coming. I'm predicting it right here. And it will backfire because it's Bill Clinton who has a vulnerability there, not
What else we got to look for?
Well, we've talked about the stealing of the election. Fortunately, Alex, we have some October surprises of our own. Stay tuned.
What about WikiLeaks? He said like 3 weeks ago and the next week, then he said before the debate, what the hell is going on with Julian Assange, who I admire, but, I mean, give us the data. Do it now.
Well, I think that he has been distracted by these trumped-up charges against him of sexual harassment, that he assaulted some woman. So now going to the Swedish Supreme Court. This is a globalist attempt to silence him.
That's what I thought. They got a bunch of fake charges, so he's tied up with that.
He is tied up with that, but a very good friend of mine is on his way to London, even as we speak, to talk to him. I will get a report shortly. I think Julian Assange is a freedom fighter, that he is a truth teller, and the idea that he is working for the Russians is as absurd as the idea put forward by our ridiculous CIA director that the Russians are going to hack our elections. No, Rahm Emanuel may hack our elections. but there is no evidence.
All right, we only got about 6 minutes left with you. Then we're going to bring in Leanne McAdoo and some of the other crew to comment. Roger Stone's our guest. I'm Alex Jones. This is post-game coverage where they went over. The debate was 97 minutes long. They started 3 minutes late, but they went 10 minutes over. So amazing. Joe Biggs, quick question. Any other comments? Also, I want to bring David Knight in here in a minute, but both of you, including Kit Daniels, other questions or comments for Roger Stone?
Well, I think one of the interesting things was there was quite a few mic drop moments where Donald Trump came out and said, you know what, you call the TPP a gold standard. Then she goes, no, I never said that. You know,
we got her saying it.
I've got 11 instances. I did a video, a report
on Infowars.com.
11 instances.
Hillary caught lying about TPP.
Exactly. And that's something she did, just like she did about the emails. She lied about the emails right there on stage again. And Donald Trump jumped on that. The only thing I wish I would have seen a little bit more was more of attacks on there. You know, it was kind of soft when he said the whole super predator thing. I thought he could have been a little bit more aggressive, brought up the fact that Bill Clinton, you know, had put a lot of these people in jail. I want to see more attacks. That's what the people want. People want to see him be aggressive.
Yeah, we're sick of these globalists. We want to see him go after.
I want to see him attack them head on at full speed.
And people say, well, that'll make her constituents that are on the fence think he's mean. No, we're not trying to conform to their little system. We want to break the paradigm. We want to shatter the paradigm. Are we wrong, Roger Stone?
You know, in all honesty, I think it's better to use the stiletto.
To just lovingly stab the knife in.
Is a woman. And there is a problem with looking unduly harsh in attacking a woman, despite the fact that she so richly deserves it. Notice that in this debate, he never pointed out that she has a fundamental problem with the truth.
That's my next question. Do you know, or can you guess, what was it Trump said that I was going to say it, but I won't say it to be nice to you? What was it he held back?
He was going to call her a liar because that's what she is. As the late Bill Sapphire said at the New York Times, she's a congenital liar. But, Alex, it is just the first of 3 debates. And I suspect Trump not only had a win tonight, in my view, but I think he will triumph in the last 2 debates.
No, I'll give him a 95. I'll give him a 95.
No, you're going to get your wish before this is over.
All right.
Roger, you're talking about October surprises. It seems like to me every single attack the Clintons go after Trump with, they rely on the mainstream media's influence. But as we all know,
she kept saying, oh, my fact checkers at the Washington Post.
Exactly.
They'll wipe my ass tonight.
But the fact remains the mainstream media is that public trust in the mainstream media is at an all-time low. They do not have influence anymore. So is it just pure arrogance by the globalists, or what is the deal? Because every single play they're playing right now in their playbook relies on media influence, but the media doesn't have the influence.
Exactly. That's why they're arrogant.
They are living in the past. Their formative political experience is in the 80s, when we only had 3 television networks and a handful of...
Yeah, they don't get... CNN has 500,000 viewers. We have millions. They still don't get... We're bigger than them. They have not come... They're starting to come to grips, though, Roger.
They think information can be suppressed as it was in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s by their elitist chums in the media. It's no longer possible.
That's why they're going after the internet.
Right, exactly. Thanks to InfoWars, thanks to Breitbart, thanks to the Daily Caller, thanks to Town Hall, thanks to all these conservative alternative media outlets, you can no longer choke the truth. You can no longer hide facts.
I just don't think there's any way that she can win straight up in a fair fight. There's no way she's
they're going to try to steal it.
When I was in Charlotte, I was speaking with National Guard. And I can't talk to them on camera. They won't do it. But, I mean, off camera, I'm talking to these guys, and they're like, man, we love Trump. Hillary's going to get us killed. Same thing with the police. I talked to the riot police out there, local law enforcement, state troopers, all that. They cannot stand Hillary Clinton. How does she have a chance in hell at all? Fairly. There's no...
She can't get crowds. It's all a hoax.
I mean...
And nationalism is rising.
And she sits there, and she's so cocky, and the whole time she's sitting there with a little smirk on her face, and she's lying, though.
The con game isn't going to work. We've got to let him go in about 3 minutes. Let's bring David Knight in for a final question and comment for Roger Stone. David Knight from the other studio.
Yeah, my comment is I'm sitting here watching the debate, and I noticed that Hillary Clinton appeared to disappear immediately. Donald Trump stayed on the floor and talked to people for
He's
at least
still there.
20 minutes. Yeah, he's still out there. But Hillary Clinton left right away. Now, she was able to go the distance. I didn't notice her eyes diverging at any point, but I noticed that she was very careful to always look to her left. It seemed like when she had these problems with the eye divergence that she was always looking to the right. And when she would turn to the right, she would turn her whole body to address Donald Trump. So it's interesting. She made it through. She didn't get into a coughing fit. She didn't collapse, but she did leave immediately after
I'll
the
give her
debate.
that. She's alive. She can walk.
Yeah.
It's alive.
That's a big win that she didn't fall down. How's that for a low bar?
Well, David Knight, the best-dressed man in all of Austin, Texas, I think you hit it right on the head. Of course she left. They had to get her on an oxygen tank off stage as soon as they could.
Yeah.
Roger, what do you make of the Secret Service? You were there for part of this that came to us. So we're going to get you big info about her health. 5 weeks ago at Cleveland, 3 weeks later they gave it to us. They said she's falling down. We got it on video. I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, do you have any intel on what's wrong with her? Because Secret Service doesn't know. They just said she has convulsions all the time. Any word on what's going on with Hillary?
I spoke to a Secret Service agent today by phone who does not want to be identified, who tells me that he is virtually certain that she has some advanced form of epilepsy. I don't know. I'm not a medical doctor, but I am intelligent enough to know she's not well. And Trump is exactly right. She lacks the stamina or the mental acuity or the balance to be president of the United States.
All right. Well, thank you. Obviously, there's a quickening. We've got 41 days left now in some time zones before the election. Roger Stone, StoneColdTruth.com. Both your books sold at Infowars.com. And, of course, the Clinton rape shirt helps support all we're doing and boldly exposes the criminals we're facing. But overall, a huge win for Trump. And I think even the establishment said, well, if he was presidential, that'd be a win. I think it happened. I was very sad for Lester Holt, who claims he's a Republican. I like the guy. He's a good reporter. But, man, Stone's right. He really did go after Trump 4 or 5 times. He didn't after Hillary. I think that's going to backfire on them. Closing comment. Do you think that'll blow up in their face, Roger Stone?
I think it's going to put the next moderators in a very tough position. Alex, let me also mention my new show, The Stone Cold Truth, on the Genesis Communications Network, radio every Saturday to 1 for 3. I've followed your advice, and I'm very pleased to be doing the shows now, and I hope some folks from InfoWars will tune in this coming Saturday.
Absolutely. We're going to put links up to it and tell our affiliates, send an email out, tell our 170, 80-plus affiliates to try to pick that broadcast up. Thank you so much, Roger Stone. We'll talk to you soon.
Alex, God bless you, and God bless America.
Absolutely. I want to give David and all of you, and not that I need a break, but I'm going to take 5 minutes because I won't shut up. That's just my nature. Kind of an alpha male, unfortunately, in a world of alpha males. I want to give you, David, not a few minutes, you a few minutes. Then I want to play this clip of one of our reporters, Ashley Beckford, really being discriminated against by foaming at the mouth racist liberals. Who really are the biggest bullies. They just think they own black people or anybody else for that matter. But the way they act like black people just like they belong to them, it's really sick. And we've got that clip coming up. I want to bring Leanne McAdoo and others in to obviously cover the unfolding situation. But David and I spent a few minutes here, and you guys take over for about 5 minutes. David, you got any points to make?
Yes, Alex, you're talking about Ashley and the attacks against her. One of the things that came out today on the Hill, Harry Reid said to the media, you need to call Donald Trump a racist. He says, there's always one word that many of the press conspicuously avoid, and that's racist. They never label Trump a racist, but he is a racist. Can you believe that Harry Reid would say that when all we hear is racist, racist, racist? And he says, you're not using it enough. That's the only thing they have, Alex, is that race card. And even to talk about how the Democrats have failed the black community, that's racist to talk about that. To go to Detroit and to show how the Democrats have ground that into the ground, both by the export of factories abroad, as well as their failed social policies in that area, to point out how they're being failed by these Democrats, that is racist. I thought it was interesting, and I'm not sure if somebody else did a report on this, a fact check on this, but I heard Hillary say that she would cut regulations I just about fell out of my chair when I saw that. Cut regulations. You mean like with the EPA or the IRS? Or you mean all the mandates that you continue to pile on top? Give us one example, please, Hillary, of one regulation
Well,
that
David,
you would cut.
she would
I
cut
can't believe that.
regulations when it comes to State Department classified emails. You know, that's,
Yeah, she
that's
cut
a
a lot of
regulation
those.
she'd cut.
She cut a lot of those. She just cut it right off the top of the email, didn't she?
Yeah, exactly.
The classification.
And one point I want to make about the whole Harry Reid thing. Here's liberalism in a nutshell. They have to stick with the narrative. If the narrative runs contrary to reality, they have to disavow reality. So, yeah, of course, you know, you're going to see white liberals that are going to attack a black Trump supporter because the black Trump supporter doesn't stick to their narrative where all blacks must be Democrats. You
That's
know,
right.
so it's, you know, it's this, they have to push this whole identity politics, even despite the fact that Americans are waking up to the fact that identity politics is not reality, and it's never been reality.
Well, I think it's also interesting, too, when you look at the taxes. Okay, Donald Trump has proposed the largest tax cut any president has ever proposed, larger than what Ronald Reagan did. And we know that that worked very effectively. And yet, she's still trying to use the same tired criticisms to say, well, it is simply top down, it's trickle down, and so forth and so on. It really worked. It raised all the boats, as JFK pointed out. And JFK was the first one to do the tax cuts. His were much smaller than Reagan's. Reagan's were much smaller than what Donald Trump has proposed. And yet what she is saying, essentially, is that she wants to have top-down taxation. She wants to have trickle-down taxation. She wants to increase taxes at the top, increase mandates on
because the
all
elites
businesses
are able to
across the
exempt
board.
themselves and shut down their competition. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to all of us have a free-for-all here. We should bring in Leanne McAdoo here in a moment. But first, we haven't done a commercial break in 3 hours and 17 minutes. I've barely plugged anything. You can see this is all very expensive, folks, to fund this. Other news agencies are making hundreds of millions of dollars in the last week. You know, millions run to us.
Taxpayer funded, you know?
Taxpayer funded. I mean, this place costs over $25 million a year to run. That's cheap compared to other media outlets. Just the bandwidth alone is going to be probably $50,000 tonight. All these free feeds. We have new probiotics available. That is the highest quality for the best labs in the country. It's Biome Defense 50 billion live and active cultures. New InfoWars Live product. We send it to you with cold packs so it retains its highest level. You can actually save it and put it on the shelf, and a lot of it lives, but it's good to keep it cold. Supports healthy flora. 23 probiotic strains, 60 capsules. That's at InfoWarsLife.com. We've got a special on Super Male Vitality that's known, concentrated, cold-pressed herbs, and Super Female Vitality, 20% off. Methylcobalamin, vitamin B12 organic, under the tongue, Secret 12, that is 20% off. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com. And if you are a longtime listener, I want to thank you for what you've done. We couldn't do any of this without you. This is a media operation you built. So whether you buy the Hillary for President t-shirt, or whether you buy non-GMO heirloom seeds, or a shortwave radio, or a solar panel system from InfoWarsStore.com, you are financing this. And it's an example of creating the economy and the culture you want by your decisions. This is what they want to shut down, the free market. A true, open, liberal, democratic society where we vote with our ideas and our purchases. InfoWarsLife.com, InfoWarsStore.com, or 888-253-3139.
That Hillary for Prison t-shirt was a huge hit in Charlotte. I'm telling you, people were calling me the Hillary for Prison guy by like day 2. And I didn't even have to have the shirt on. Like, hey, are you the guy that was wearing that Hillary for Prison shirt? Where do I go get that at? I want one. I need one. I want one for my mom, my dad, my cousin, my
That's
brother.
a third edition. We're about to end that, and then no more Hillary for Prison shirts in the next month. We don't defeat her. That's just the way it is. 42 days, starting tomorrow. In the final countdown, we make $19.95 of them. We make like $10 off of it. It's hard to send reporters. It's hard to pay for all this. It's hard to talk 8 hours a day. But we do it. I'm not bitching. It's an animating contest. Leanne McAdoo, come in here, my friend. Incredible. What did you make of that debate? I know it was hard for you and I to both chomp on our tongues and not talk during it. But my God, what did you make of that? I mean, a lot of folks are saying he did good the first 45 minutes. He got too easy on her. What was happening? His advisor said, don't bully the corpse. He laid down to a great extent. He still did a great job. But, man, I tell you, she doesn't deserve it. Leanne.
She doesn't deserve it. And he actually brought that up. He said, you know, I came out here and I was ready to say terrible things about Hillary and her family, but they told me not to. And I thought to myself, I just can't do it. But she deserves it, and no one would feel sorry for her. And you could see the look on her face. She was almost like, Stay calm.
And
Stay
then she
calm.
got real nasty
don't
at
have a
the
seizure.
end, figuring out he wasn't going to attack. It was
Exactly.
watching him not fight back, and her attack made me sick.
Yes, and you have said that to me so many times. It's when they sense the weakness, when they sense, oh, well, he's not going to go and attack me, and the debate is almost over now, so I'm going to get those last little jabs in and say something about sexism that has absolutely nothing to do with the debate.
Had her on the ropes within 30 minutes. Continue, Leanne.
Well, could you believe that they brought up the freaking birther issue again one more time?
Which she put out.
Which she put out, Sidney Blumenthal.
She's like, how dare you support
her team.
ISIS when she created it? Everything she was saying was like her babies,
Right.
Leanne.
Well, you know, it's what they say. When you point a finger, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at you. And that's how Hillary Clinton, that's how she operates. She's always pointing at people, but she's always got those fingers pointing back at her. And I just want to make this statement so people understand this. First of all, I don't think that they really understand how many people in this country were really curious whether or not Obama was born in this country or not. And this whole birth certificate issue.
Why'd he put it in 3 years of the Harvard Review that he ran, that he was born there?
Exactly.
They set us up.
Why
to
did
go, you know.
Well, why did it take him so long to release his birth certificate? The question was, why, Trump, why did it take you so long to admit that Obama was born here in the U.S.? Why did it take him so long to prove that he was? You know what? It's not racist to question whether or not someone was born in the United States if they want to be the
Leanne,
president.
stay there. I agree. And your colleague, Margaret Howell, is here with us from one of the studios with David Knight. Margaret, we haven't heard from you tonight yet. You are fired up. Margaret, what did you make of this? This is unscripted, teleprompter free. Margaret, what do you have to say?
Alex, you know, the victim card that she played tonight, I wish that he'd gone after her harder on ISIS, on Russia. You know, I was jumping out of my seat. I know Kit Daniels, his fingers must be on fire right now watching him type. You know, it was just unbelievable. The lies pouring out of her. It's hard to watch it, frankly, but I wish that
It
he'd
was
gone
like
after
watching
her.
the entrance to a sewage treatment plant.
Pretty much, exactly. You know, the ISIS issue alone, you know, he could have hammered her so hard, implicating Russia for a DNC hack with no proof, you know, and that really is one of my greatest fears, that she's trying to set them up so that if in fact she does become president, she could then go to war by proxy with Russia. You know, every time she mentions Russia, it makes me twitch, because it's like she has no evidence, and yet she implicates them with every breath. It's very disturbing.
Right, I agree that he really could have used that hammer to come after her about the emails, and that was one thing he kind of held back, where he kind of wanted to get into the contents of the hack. What did we learn from that hack? You're blaming it on Russia. It could have been China. Who knows who it could have been, but the contents of the hack showed us, of course, that this whole system was rigged. But then he didn't take the opportunity to go after her and how she jeopardized the safety of our country. So I agree. He
Yes.
should have brought that hammer out.
And since Margaret Howell brought this up, I'm going to play this now, get everybody's take on it, from Leanne to Margaret, you name it. This was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff last Friday. This got no coverage in the U.S. We played this Sunday and Monday. And it's got, and this is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dumford, saying, we've been basically ordered to attack the Russians. I need to get official authorization for World War III. Now, here is the clip.
For Syria. What about the option of controlling the airspace so that barrel bombs cannot be dropped?
All the options.
What do you think of that option, sir?
Right now, Senator, for us to control all of the airspace in Syria would require us to go to war against Syria and Russia. That's a pretty fundamental decision that certainly I'm not going to make.
And then he goes on to say, we've been asked to stop Russia. They've been invited in by Syria. They've been fighting ISIS. Are you, because they keep saying in Congress, and Obama says, attack them. And you're, I'm going to go back to Margaret, and I'll go back to Leanne, but you're a former military guy, heavy combat. Joe's been written about in the newspapers. Your unit was in heavy combat. I mean, they tell the military to do stuff without asking, what does it do? Like, go attack the Russians, Joe, because they're battling ISIS. How do you feel about that?
I don't like that. I mean, I like the fact that Donald Trump is one of the people that want to actually have good relationship with Russia.
He said that. And what are they doing to us?
But they attack him, though, for that. I don't understand that. Like, it's not our job to police the world. It's not our job to go in.
Well, the Russians aren't starting to fight with us. If they want to fight, they get one.
Hillary's the only one that wants to fight. She is a warmonger.
Exactly. Since when do we go start a fight with Russia?
It was interesting that she wore that.
Who's fighting our enemies?
She was wearing that red dress. It was just, it was symbolic of the, you know, the blood that's all soaked on her right now. I mean, it's.
I agree. But what is it like for you to see the chairman of the Joint Chiefs telling Congress, You want to know fly, we got to fight the Russians for that. Doesn't Congress get it? It ain't the Iraqis, it's the Russians with 10,000 nuclear weapons and submarines off our coast, dumbass.
Right.
I mean, we had a tough enough time in Afghanistan, in Iraq. Think how difficult it will be to stand up against an actual army that trains all the time, that has high-tech weapons, who knows how to use those weapons. That would be a blood.
Well, listen, we will defeat Russia, and 1 hour later, we'll all be dead. Yes, yes, they'll be more dead than us when the whole Earth's dead. Yes, we will put more craters on the Russian skeletons. We'll have 5 times the craters and skeletons.
I'd rather.
We'll all be dead. They'll all be dead. What the hell is going on
It
here?
makes no sense.
Margaret, Hal, Leanne, pop in. Kit, anybody?
Yeah, I
David,
want to
the
make
free
one
for all.
point.
Let's go crazy.
Remember last year, Russia destroyed 33% of ISIS's fighting force through like 5 weeks of bombing strikes.
Right.
It only took them 5 weeks.
Right.
So let's not.
You're a Russian agent. You don't support radical Islam, Margaret.
You know, that's an excellent point, Kid. You know, Trump made this point weeks ago. It went largely ignored. He said, why do we care? The Russians are bombing the hell out of ISIS. Why don't we let them? You know, that's an excellent point. Apparently, she's not.
Yeah, let them pay for it instead of us.
Well, ISIS is Hillary's little pawns.
Exactly. But Margaret, I'm going to give this person like 3 minutes. Go ahead, Margaret.
You know, going back to her points, and she told so many lies tonight, Alex, and I tried to write all of them down. Russia was a main one for me. ISIS being formed. She said ISIS formed in this vacuum. You know, she was talking about the vacuum of intelligence that she wanted to collect to defeat them.
She supported
Trump
them.
should have hit her hard. Thank you. Trump should have hit her harder on the fact that Obama and Clinton herself formed and created ISIS, armed them, funded them, and then gave them the oil in northern Iraq. You know, all points that he missed, but I thought it was a safe bet by him. He's got 2 more. I just want to see him hit her harder on that. I think the American people largely, you know, besides us, who's covering this? So they need to know it. But hopefully he comes back and hits her harder on this ISIS issue.
Great point. Leanne McAdoo, then David Knight, then our other crew here.
Well, I absolutely agree with Margaret on this, that, you know, he could have hit her harder there. And the fact that they are wanting to shut down the airspace when the U.S. is the one that is going in and mistakenly taking out the wrong target. And Hillary
Clinton
Clinton.
confirmed launching Hellfires on the Syrian military.
They don't want anyone in there who's actually taking out ISIS. They only want the U.S. to be allowed to fly over that airspace when they're, you know, dropping weapons into the hands of ISIS accidentally. So who's giving them these orders? Because I know that our military is not that incompetent. And also, Hillary Clinton is running, bragging on the fact that she was the loudest voice that wanted to arm the Syrian rebels, who we have well documented has become ISIS.
She
they
hopes we're
defected
dumb.
to ISIS.
David Knight, I mean, what do you think of the debate overall?
Well, Alex, let me talk about the ISIS and the cybersecurity issues, because we cut a brief fact check on that. Think about the absurdity of the fact that Hillary Clinton is saying she's going to protect us by physically fighting ISIS. She's going to protect us by enhancing our cybersecurity. Hillary Clinton is going to enhance our cybersecurity, okay? What a joke. And the fact is that she not only created ISIS, the Islamic State, in Syria and Iraq. Their policies created that, enabled it. They trained them. They equipped them. They acted as their Air Force a week ago this last weekend, decimating a Syrian base that was protecting a Syrian city.
That was a frontline fire base stopping Al-Qaeda ISIS advance.
Yes. What an amazing series of absurd lies. I mean, anybody who looks at this and talks, and hears her talk about cybersecurity, look, what she wants to do is censor the internet.
She wants to use their Al-Qaeda. Here's an example. We do a video against Al-Qaeda or ISIS. YouTube censors it and says you can't monetize this, which is how we pay the bills, because you said ISIS, period. But then ABC and CBS and NBC can say ISIS. We can't, even though we're bigger than them in most cases.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what they do with the transcripts from the shooter in Orlando. They took out ISIS whenever he mentioned it in the calls with police. They're censoring everywhere.
We've had the whistleblowers on where 4 years ago they told them, if you can't investigate mosques, you can't investigate Muslims, you can't investigate Islam. They're like, you're not allowed to investigate Muslims. So, of course, then they blame the FBI. I'm not defending, but the FBI goes, oh, well, 2 years ago his dad warned the bomber of New York and New Jersey was going to attack because the FBI is not allowed to. I mean, it's like...
They're not rioters, they're peaceful protesters.
Kit Daniels, David Knight.
Yeah, I remember, David, during the, I forgot what shooting it was, but Hillary Clinton locked a investigation into the mosque where the shooter was visiting. So yeah, there's been a
San Bernardino.
Yeah,
well, let's talk about the shooting that just happened this last weekend at the mall. Okay,
Another
the guy,
Muslim radical jihadi.
Not only another Muslim, but somebody who tweeted out back in January, "We win. I vote for Hillary Clinton." Will she disavow this Islamic terrorist who just murdered 5 people in a mall?
Paradoxical is
He'll
that?
probably invite his parents to come on stage with her.
That's what I was about to say.
Yeah. David, you talk about the
Like
shooting
Majid.
up in near Seattle. I worked on the website this weekend, and when the news broke, I was like, is this really something we would put on the website? Because we don't know what's happening. All it was saying the suspect was Hispanic. And when I looked into it, it was like, the victims were randomly...
they blamed it on Hispanics and the guys from Turkey.
But
They're
what
still
the
saying,
red flag to me was the fact that he was randomly selecting his targets. We have seen that with every single Islamic terror attack in the U.S. in the past 5 years.
Well, they're all obsessed
if we
with
look at
women
his,
because they're suppressed.
Yeah.
If we look at his Tumblr page, he puts out Subhan Allah, glory be to God. He has comments about serial killers. He praises ISIS. This guy